Now, we have a couple copies left. Ingra has two. It's a brown covered book. It's called The Horrors of Vaccination, printed in 1920 by a man named Charles Higgins. I think she has two copies left. I see them over there on the table. Charles Higgins did research that he presented to President Woodrow Wilson in 1920. What Charles Higgins shows is that the outbreaks of what was back then called, quote, paratyphus pneumonia. See, they didn't call it a 1918 Spanish flu. That came much, much, much later. But the medical doctors at the time was calling it a typhus fever-like disease that goes into pneumonia. That's what they were calling it. But he tracked that disease back to U.S. military bases and eventually found that it all came out from Europe through the military bases. All of the people involved in this death and destruction had received a typhus fever vaccination. Now, how did John D. Rockefeller make this vaccine? Let me be very graphic. Typhus fever, you typically break out in fever blisters, a lot of them, along with dysentery, dehydration. Eventually that causes convulsions and death if it's a bad case. So what these scientists at the time did was go and harvest human DNA from these pus pustules, these fever blisters, then injected them into a secondary host to magnify the production of this, what they thought was bacterial mass. And they did it in pigs. They put it into pigs, young swine, piglets. Then when these piglets got ill with this disease state they caused, they harvested it and put it again into chicken and turkey eggs. Human, pig, bird. By vaccination needles, this was injected into our men and women serving America for the first time, being conscripted, being drafted, and there was no choice in 1916, 1917. You took this vaccine or you went to the brig and you worked hard labor. There was no choice. You see, Charles Higgins makes this plea to President Wilson saying, what are you doing? These men that are being conscripted, you're taking away their constitutional rights of choice. And he presented this book to President Wilson, saying, stop this mandatory forced insanity that we believe is the main cause of this 1918 death toll across the world. Now, let me be clear. Do I know 150% positive that that's how it happened? I'm not a microbiologist. I admit that. But I have a brain, and I can compile the evidence, and I can produce a hypothesis. That's called a scientific method, folks. And if I continue to prove that hypothesis, then it becomes a theory. And the theory needs to hold water. All you hear in conjunction with this new swine flu pandemic in the research papers put us by Big Pharma and the CDC and the World Health Organization. They want everybody to be afraid because they say, we are due for another 1918 pandemic. The world's past due for it. It's inevitable. Why? Did God recombine this virus? Does God make mistakes like that? Does he not want all of us to be healthy and happy and enjoy life and liberty? To enjoy our children, right? That's my God. That's what he wants for me. He's not into making these killer viruses just to plague mankind because he feels like it. I hear people from this very pulpit say that it happens by natural selection. Oh my goodness, no. Not my God. He doesn't do that. Only man playing God can accomplish that thing. That's the reality. Do I have proof of this? No. But what other theory for this creation of this pandemic is out there circulating? You just heard it. God did it. It's natural. No. No. What do we have now coming out from the CDC laboratories? We have this so-called swine flu. What many people don't realize is the swine flu is a recombinant, reassortant, triple virus, human H3N2, bird flu H5N1, and pig flu H1N1. Did God make this virus? Naturally, no way. No way. Well, I calculated with the logarithmal formula based on the total gene clades and the 8 chromosome helixes in viruses. To be able to match up that type of a sequence, it's about 1 in 50 billion. I guess it's possible. Maybe I can take $50 and go clean out Las Vegas, too. The odds aren't in my favor. Statistically speaking, no way. So, here we have the World Health Organization chomping at the bit to rise to level 6 so that they can become dictatorial controllers of 194 member nations, with the firm belief that people are too dumb and too stupid to see through it. They're banking on the fact that they'll believe the lettered agencies, the WHO, the CDC, etc., who want you to believe this is an act of God, it's act of nature. Impossible. Logic. We have, by way of proof, we have these gene clades of the pandemic flu virus that have been analyzed by top virologists in the world. I'm not a virologist, I don't have a virology lab, but I know how to make a phone call. No way. Now, I can't afford, as April showed it, I can't afford to risk my multi-million-dollar research stream, so I'm going to tell you this on the QT. I'm going to tell you this so that you can share it with other people. I'm going to educate you enough to know what I'm telling you. And here is the documentation. When I first got this in April, I was thinking, man, there has been all kinds of crimes committed here. Crimes against humanity. I found out that Basel, Switzerland-based Novartis Pharmaceutical in 2006 applied for the patent for the master control vaccine for the very virus that was just released. Collusion. Why? I like to believe it's just about money, big money, hundreds of billions of dollars of windfall profits. I like to believe that's all there is to it. But I've dug a little bit deeper, folks. In the halls of the World Health Organization and the Club of Rome, you see something really strange coming out. They want, in their own warped minds, they think the earth is way overpopulated. They think that 6.5 billion people are way too many. In their own warped elitist minds, they think the earth should only have 500 million people. Folks, I'm not making this up, it's there. The Club of Rome has this genocidal agenda since the 1970s.